So this is They Say, I Say, book about argumentation, chapters 4 and 7. My name is Eduardo Pizarro. I'm from Team 1, and I'm the summarizer. For first part of chapter 4, talks about how expertise is not the most important requirement for an argument. Talks about how the basis of an argument is not always pure knowledge and expertise. Sometimes I struggle with this as well. It says many students or many young people feel intimidated by that lack of knowledge. And it gives us a quote that I really like. It says, arguments are based on daily habits of mind that can be isolated, identified, and used by almost anyone. Sometimes I feel intimidated because I'm not, a total expert on whatever topic that I'm having a debate or argument on. So, reading these chapters actually did give me a different perspective to see how I can structure my arguments next time I have a debate. Continuing with chapter 4, it talks about responding to other people's ideas. So it says that the best, most effective way to respond to these ideas are three ways: agree, disagree, or agree and disagree at the same time. So it's going to be one of those three. Uh, it says finding the speaker or the writer's stand on the subject can sometimes be tricky. We all know that. Some people like to, avoid saying what they actually feel or believe in that subject. So sometimes you kind of have to dive deep and see what the speaker or the writer is about on that topic. And once you actually find out their opinion, even if they're agreeing, disagreeing, or both, you need to determine if the writer is going to challenge that idea. So again, with the three ways to respond, which is agree, disagree, or a little bit of both. Some speakers or writers are going to feel like doing or limiting themselves to these three ways to respond are going to oversimplify their argument, therefore taking away some of the credibility. But it will make it clearer and easier to follow for a listener or a reader on the debate. So obviously, a clear argument is a more effective argument. And the book says that having a baseline stance is the best way to go, which I definitely agree with that. So the way you do this is clearly starting by saying, I agree, I disagree, or one of the examples that the book says, it says, or I am of two minds, I agree that, then you state the argument, but I cannot agree that, and then you say what you don't agree with. So disagreeing and explaining why. So saying that you disagree is clearly not enough. Obviously, you need to explain why you disagree and what part of the argument that you disagree with. There's a duh statement that the book says. This is an example. It is true that this is a way to respond to a duh statement, which would be it is true that then the argument, but we already knew that with arguments that are giving obvious statistics or claiming something that everyone already knew. So another way to disagree is the twisted method. There's an example right here. It says X argues that the circulation of guns is the reason that the crime rate is on the rise. So the example would be, I agree that crime rate is on the rise, but that is exactly why I oppose stricter gun legislation. We need guns to protect ourselves against criminals. So it basically just twists what the other person says. It's pretty effective to disagree with. And, obviously, for me personally, I've had a lot of people that whenever I'm arguing or like having an argument or debate with them, I hurt their feelings, or I've seen it everywhere. But disagreement doesn't necessarily mean that you have to hurt someone's feelings, or if someone disagrees with what you're saying, doesn't mean that it's something personal or a personal attack or anything like that. So again, chapter 4 is another one, agreeing with a difference, which, agreeing is more complicated than it seems. I guess you could just stand by someone's idea and just parrot it and repeat it over and over again, and it's not really doing you any favors because you're just saying what someone else is saying, and you're not really giving an original idea. So, agreeing with a difference is pretty effective for credibility and whatever. So even if you're agreeing, it's important to add something new and fresh to the table, clearly. So it's also important to note that when you agree with one thing, you disagree with the other. So there's always going to be two sides of the story. And if you disagree with one of them, there's going to be people from the other side coming to attack you, wanting to get your opinion on a different topic or whatever it is. But you disagree with one thing, you agree with the other, vice versa. Agreeing and disagreeing at the same time. This helps us get past the is to is not arguments that children make. This was an example from the book. Another quote or agreeing and disagreeing at the same time would be, although I agree with X to a point, I cannot accept that. And then you keep going with the argument. That's very effective. You know, you're obviously disagreeing and agreeing at the same time. If you want to express your argument more than disagreement, this is another example would be, while X is probably wrong when she claims that she is right that, and then the argument right there, that's pretty effective as well. And side note, it is okay to be undecided, and the book states that having mixed feelings can sometimes be impressive because you know you're trying to pick from two different sides, and you know it doesn't necessarily mean that you always it's always black and white. You know, it's no topic really, or very limited topics are going to be either one or the other. So you know, having being in that gray area is sometimes good, and it's okay to be undecided. So moving on to chapter 7, which I found very interesting. Starts off with so what, who cares questions. You know, regardless of how interesting a topic is, you need to identify why it matters. So the book gave an example about obesity deaths. You know, clearly there's going to be people that care about that. So no matter how interesting or important the topic is, you're going to need a so what, who cares statement to engage people even more and make them care even more. So not even writers or speakers address why their argument matters, and that's a big mistake. So these so what and who cares statements are very important questions for both writer, speaker, and the reader and the listener. So first with the who cares is indicating why people need to hear or why they would care about a passage. There's a lot of ways to show who cares. So an example from the book is parents used to think spanking was necessary. Now experts suggest that it can be counterproductive, you know, by providing that contrast between what parents used to think and now experts are suggesting something different, creates that dramatic tension that the listeners and readers are going to be more invested in it, and they're going to want to see that issue resolved. So moving on to so what question, so what obviously goes hand in hand with the question who cares. A great way to make an audience care is by, you know, showing how the problem could affect them or portray the issue or the statement as broad as or severe as possible. So an example of the book gave would be ultimately what is at stake here is, so you know that obviously gives an ultimatum, or you know just shows how important the situation is or how important it could get, how bad it could get. So closing off with chapter 7, answering both so what and who cares questions are going to elevate your argument or position to a whole new level. It's very important to add those in whatever speech or book, whatever it is that you're doing. And the book claims that having these so what, who cares questions are like bringing a cheerleading squad into your text. And I just think that, you know, that's a great example of putting it. And yeah, I agree with that. So, yeah.